So, previously we said then that the dawn of the 3rd century crisis, right, the late 2nd century, say the year 200, the problem of the economy, politics led to this religious revival, spiritual reawakening throughout the Roman Empire on the part of the Romans. Therefore, they needed to get right with the gods and decided to order a general empire-wide supplicatio. S-U-P-P-L-I-C-A-T-I-O, put an N on the end, you get supplication. What is a supplication? I'm asking for something. Asking for what? Divine favor from the gods, that they bestow their grace on us. Supplication. That's from the Roman perspective. From the Christian perspective, and still today in the popular imagination, justifiably so, it remains understood as the period of the persecutions of the Christians. Why? Well, this has to do with the nature of the so-called supplicatio, or supplication itself. To begin with, technically speaking, going back to sort of dispelling urban legend and popular myth, there were only 4 empire-wide general supplications, only 4, and they all occurred in the 3rd century. The first of which began with the Emperor Septimius Severus, whom we've already mentioned. And each of these supplications, when they were called by an emperor, they began with that emperor's edict, decree, inaugurating the supplication, and basically ended with the death of that emperor, with the exception of the 4th and final one, which I'll explain later. Okay, so the first one, Septimius Severus, it begins in 197 and it ends with his death in the year 211. The second one, so a little more than a decade, kind of a long time. What is that? Almost 15 years. The next 2 are very brief, relatively speaking. The second one is under Emperor Decius, or Decius, D-E-C-I-U-S. Emperor Decius begins in the year 249 and ends with his assassination in the year 251. So 2 years, roughly. The third one, within the same decade, under the Emperor Valerianus, or Valerian, which begins almost immediately with his coming to power in the year 257 and ends with his assassination in the year 261. By the way, the vast majority of Roman emperors were whacked, just as an aside. Okay. The fourth and final one, which the Christians would memorialize forever after as the Great Persecution, occurred under one of Rome's lesser known, but actually administratively, one of its better emperors, a guy named Diocletian, not Domitian, whom we talked about, who ironically inaugurated the period of the Christian cult being a religio illicita, an illegal religion, in the year 81. But this begins in the year, let's say 300, under Emperor Diocletian, Diocletian, Diocletian. And it lasts even beyond Diocletian's abdication of the throne as emperor in the year 306. We'll come back to that next lecture session also. But really only ends with, at least statutorily, juridically, with the Edict of Toleration under Constantine in the year 313. Also more on that later. Okay. And that is the period that it appears from the written record, and archaeological record for that matter, that it would seem that the most people were put to death or executed, or at least their execution or other fate was justified by their being members of this illegal religion, the Christian cult. Okay. So, how did this work? How did this thing, the supplication, work in the first place? Well, Emperor Septimius Severus, he reinstituted, or he resurrected, an already pre-existing bureaucratic, let's call it a deep state entity within the Roman Empire's government, known in Latin as agentes in rebus. Agentes, agentes, looks and sounds like what in English perhaps? Agents in rebus, things. Agents in things. Agents in things. If that does not already strike you as a rather sinister tone, potentially, think of, I used to say modern times, think of contemporary times. Contemporary as in, yeah, now. Let's look at the 20th century at least. Agents and things. Secret police. Gestapo. Ministers of truth. Yeah, that's exactly what they were. Secret police. So, they were the ones commissioned to make sure that good and patriotic Romans were performing, complying with the supplicati, or the supplication. And if you complied, then you received what was called a libellus in Latin, Libellus, libellus, a certificate, not a participation trophy. Well, actually, it was a participation trophy. So a certificate declaring, formal, stamped and all, sealed, signed by the Roman authorities, that in fact you had complied with the supplication. And in order to comply with the supplication, that meant that you had to perform a sacrificium, 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 looks and sounds like sacrifice in English. Okay, so here's how it usually rolled in the 3rd century in the Greater Roman Empire. Let's say that you are at home doing whatever it is you do, and there's a knock at the door. You go to the door, open the door, and there are the MIBs, the agentes in rebus, and they give you a summons. You have been summoned to court because either just randomly, kind of out of a lottery, they've picked your name, or maybe it's come up that it has come to the intention of the local authorities that you may be a member of this religio illicita, this illegal religion, the Christian cult. And so you have to appear in court before the magistrate, which you do on the given day at the designated time, etc. You sit down before the magister, M-A-G-M-A-G-I-S-T-E-R, the magistrate, we got the word from. That'll come back up later on in the course as well. The magister, the magistrate, the judge. And the judge asks you quite bluntly in Latin, esne Christianus, or Christiana, if you are female. And let's say that you respond, Christianus non sum. I am not a Christian. Perfect, says the magistrate. Whew, that was what I was hoping to hear. And believe me, I trust you. But it's always better to also verify. Consequently, before I can give you this libellus, saying that you have indeed complied with the supplicatio, the supplication, we need to have confirmation of that you have performed a sacrificium, a sacrifice. And that could occur in one of two ways. One, maybe the situation, let's say we're in a town somewhere in North Africa, hick town, not much going on. There's not been a real problem or issue among the locals regarding this illegal religion, the Christians. And so we can dispense with a lot of the pomp and circumstance here, which is also good for me because I'm a magistrate, but I'm probably politically inclined and motivated, corrupt, and I have reasons to make things simpler. So here's all you have to do. You go to whichever local temple you want here in town, Temple of Isis, Temple of Hera, Temple, whatever, it doesn't matter. And you have the temple priests burn some incense for you. And they will give you confirmation to bring back to me, and then I will sign off, seal your libellus, and you're good to go. Okay? All right. The Christians will later wind up calling this group of people thurificati. Thurificati in Latin. Thurif, thurif, I-C-A-T-I. Thurificati, okay? Those who have burned incense. All right. Let's say the situation is a bit more complex and complicated in our particular town somewhere in the Roman Empire, that there actually have been known problems, confrontations, altercations, disputes among the locals because of members of this illegal religion, the Christian cult. And moreover, even several different other religious cults have been putting pressure on me, the magistrate. Why? Because these other cults have been losing members to not just this particular religious cult, but one moreover, which is an illegal religion. So things are very complicated. I'm in a difficult situation as magistrate. And consequently, I say, okay, fine. You're not a Christian, great. Trust but verify. In this case, you're going to have to go through the whole rigmarole. You're going to have to go through the full rites and rituals. You'll have to perform the entire sacrifice, which means that you'll have to probably go to the only store in town that sells the wood to be used in such a sacrifice, that is burned. Then you got to go to the only guy in town that sells the proper animals to be sacrificed. Then you got to pay the temple priests whatever they're asking for. A lot of money, but that's our only option here. Okay? Christians, again, later, well, actually not much later, at the time, would wind up referring to those who did this as sacrificati. That is, those who had performed the full rites of a sacrifice. There is a third group that arises, and this is the most fascinating, the most telling, really. Let's say that you are a Christian and you've denied it, and the magistrate says, okay, trust but verify, and orders you to perform the full rites of the sacrifice. So not just the incense sprinkling, a lot cheaper, mum's the word kind of, but you got to do the whole thing. In other words, apart from the financial loss to you, which, believe it or not, was significant, word is going to get out, especially if you are in a small town in the Roman Empire. So, for example, let's say that whoever it is before the magistrate says, look, Your Honor, I got a problem here because as I'm sure Your Honor knows, my family is the most famous and lucrative family or company of goat herders here. And if word gets out among other people here in town, most of whom are Christian, in fact, Your Honor, with all due respect, I really don't know why it is that I have gotten singled out here in this town. Maybe it's precisely because someone wants to get rid of my family because of our very lucrative and famous goat herding business. Someone has it out for us, and they're using me conveniently as the, no pun intended, scapegoat here. Most of our town is Christian, and if word gets out that I perform the sacrifice, then that means I will be ex comunio. ex comunio, comunio. I will be, we say, excommunicated. You say, who cares? Who cares indeed in the 3rd century? Because in such a situation, if you were excommunicated, that is, you were out of not just communion, rather what the word really means, communication with the Catholic Church, with this worldwide political assembly of Christ, that meant that not only were you now suddenly deprived of divine graces and favors, spiritual assistance from Jesus, but it meant that you were shunned. No one would do business with your family. Your family would most likely have to move lock, stock, and barrel somewhere else, start a new life, etc., etc. It was that serious, which is why it was so effective within the Catholic Church, not just in the 3rd century, when it's still illegal, but especially for centuries to come, as we'll see later on in the course, this practice of this mechanism of excommunication. Consequently, Your Honor, maybe there's another way we could resolve this, fix this. My father, as you know, with our lucrative goat herding business, we have a lot of money. So maybe we could fix this the old-fashioned way. No, not that old-fashioned way. I mean, with this. And you, across the desk, across the bench, you slide what here in Italy we still call a mazzetta, a wad of cash. You corrupt the Roman official, the magistrate, the judge, who, you may not be surprised about this, more often than not, is okay with that. In the vest pocket, it goes. And automatically you get your libellus, your certificate. Well, believe it or not, or as you may imagine, Word of this got out as well, that there were indeed Christians bribing officials to do this. And the Christians would wind up designating them as libellatici, 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 those who bribed a Roman magistrate, official, authority to procure in order to get this certificate saying that one had complied with the sacrifices. Okay. The interesting thing here to begin with is that it was not the Roman authorities that came up with these designations for Christians who did this, purificati, sacrificati, libellatici. It was the Christian community itself, or communities, throughout the Roman Empire that did this, which again means that it must have been rather pervasive. There were a lot more people doing this who were Christians than not. Secondly, once one did this, one was ex communio, out of communication, out of communion, excommunicated, and a member now of the umbrella group term, in Latin, lapsi, L-A-P-S-I, lapsi, those who have lapsed in the face of supposedly, purportedly bearing witness to their belief that, as we read in the Gospel of John, Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. Okay. You've rejected that, you've apostatized, and therefore you are excommunicated, out of communication, out of communion, because you have lapsed. You are a member of the lapsi. Okay. What if you were a real die-hard believer? You were convinced. Well, here's how that Dancore goes. Magister asks, Esne Christianus? And you respond, Christianus sum, I am a Christian. Are you a Christian? I'm a Christian. The magistrate says, all right, maybe you didn't hear me correctly the first time. Let's try this again. Esne Christianus? And you say, Christianus sum, I am a Christian. And the magistrate says, oh God, not one of these again. Because remember, the Romans are the last ones to actually want to have to enforce this. It's bad. It's bad for the economy. It's bad for politics. And hell, bizarrely enough, it's even bad for religion. We are not trying to screw up our social order. But because of all these other systems effing it all up, we got to go through this, hoping that more people wise up. Okay. Magistrate, for the third and final time, it was required in this proceeding, these proceedings under Roman law. Esne Christianus, are you a Christian? Christianus sum. You insist for the third time now because it's a matter of public record. Remember, we got stenographers, court reporters. This is all part of court record. Now the magistrate is stuck because you've admitted it 3 times, couldn't knock a little bit of sense into you. And so the magistrate says, shit, well, I have to sentence you. This gets even more interesting. So let's say that you're not a Roman citizen. You're not a civis Romanus. You're not a Roman citizen. Well, there were 2 general options that a magistrate could choose. And again, this depended on the local situation. Again, economically, politically, religiously, the whole thing. Right? Maybe the magistrate could get away where there were different reasons why. The magistrate would send you off to the mines, right? Go work in the salt mines in Sardinia, where you will probably contract leprosy, a flesh-eating disease, and in a matter of several months, You'll eventually die after watching various appendages of your body rot away and fall off as you're picking out salt. Okay, so you'd be sent to the mines. Maybe tortured, but that was more usually kind of a further attempt. Maybe you'd be in prison for a little while, incarcerated, tortured to get you to recant, because we'd rather you recant than have to do this. Okay, the other option was execution. And if you're not a Roman citizen, that was one of two ways. One, today, what is probably the more famous, popular way, especially thanks to the Christians, crucifixion, which the Romans already practiced. Because it was also a public policy statement, right? For example, already in the early 1st century BC, Spartacus, the gladiators, the slave revolt, when they crucified 6,000 people. I don't mean to laugh, but I'm kind of jaded at this point. Along the Via Appia, from the Circus Maximus here in Rome, all the way down to Capua, near Naples. Public statement, right? A warning for others. The other form of execution for a non-Roman citizen in ancient Rome, which was the more popular one, and the older one, really, the more traditional one, was by damnatio ad bestias. Damnatio, damnation, without the N on the end. Condemnation, condemned ad, unto. Condemned to bestias, B-E-S-T-I-A-S. Sound or look like it in the English? The beasts. Being fed to the lions. This was a real thing in ancient Rome. And it was not invented for the Christians. It was not like the Romans were sadistically trying to torture Christians because they were Christians. That may have been part of it. The Romans were already sadistic. I'd give them a little levity. I mean, look at today. But anyway, all right. At least they had practical, again, pragmatic, practical Romans. Why do this? Well, one, it cut down on the prison population. The Romans never had a problem with overcrowded prisons because capital punishment was just kind of the effective tool of the day in ancient Rome. Number two, the public execution of criminals found guilty of a crime worthy of capital punishment, like being a member of an illegal religion, like the Christian cult. The public execution of criminals were the halftime shows. So instead of having, I don't know, Beyonce and Justin Bieber twerk it all over the field during gladiatorial combat, as if that were not enough, they would bring out the condemned into the arena floor to be torn apart by wild animals. Okay, so damnatio ad bestias. Those of you who have already met me or had me in class, at least I think maybe you kind of get my reaction here. Those of you who don't know me, I hope I'm not completely turning you off by my nervous laughter. It's not so nervous. It's pretty sincere laughter. Just, anyway, okay. So, that was it if you were a non-Roman citizen. If you were a civis Romanus, a Roman citizen, then that capital punishment, the sentence, if you were sentenced to capital punishment, that occurred in one of three ways. Now, this is actually even more interesting. One was exilium, exile. And again, because of political reasons, maybe your family is very powerful in your local community, and maybe it's not wise for the magistrate has to do something, but maybe execution is not a good alternative. And so you're exiled somewhere like the Black Sea, a beach along the Romanian coast, Crimea, Ukraine, that kind of thing. Okay. The second option, which was very, very successful throughout Rome's history, was sentencing one to commit suicidium. Suicidium. Suicide? Sounds kind of strange. How in the world, why would someone willingly go along with that? Because under Roman law, if one were sentenced to suicide and the individual did not comply, then the state automatically confiscated not just that person, but that person's entire family's estate. So, thirdly and finally, just outright execution, which, because you're a Roman citizen, at least is swift and relatively painless. I'd like to ask people on the other side of that. I've never understood that, how it's painless. But anyway, decapitation, beheading. Okay. So, that is what happened once you were on trial for being a member of this illegal religion, this religio illicita, the Christian cult, and either way, one pled, right? Guilty, not guilty. And the consequences that arose from that. There were final more groups that emerged among the Christians when this happened. Confessores, confessors, and martyrs, martyrs. Martyres, martyr, Greek word meaning a courtroom witness. And the Christians considered those who wound up dying during these supplications, persecutions, to be martyres, martyrs, because they bore witness, their belief, Gospel of John, that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. They're witnesses, courtroom witnesses to this. Martyrs. The second group, confessores, confessors. No, not some weird old dude in a wooden box that listens to your darkest secrets. That is someone who has confessed or professed with their life the same exact ideals, but didn't die. So let's say you're sent off to the mines, the emperor dies, and you're missing a couple of limbs because you got leprosy, but the supplication, the persecution's over. Now you can come back to the community, though you're still probably going to be shunned anyway. So you're a confessor, someone who's still alive, but has done everything up until the actual point of death. All right. That leads us to then the problem of what to do with these lapsi, not for the Roman authorities. They could not care less. Rather, for the Christians themselves. What do we do with these people who have denied Christ, apostatized? They're excommunio, they're excommunicated, they're lapsi, they're fallen. What do we do with them? We